I am 17 years old, and am a chronic cannabis smoker. My friend had been telling me that he had been trying DXM in the form of Robitussin DM for a few months, and that he was getting 30 grams of pure DXM powder from a mail-order site he found on the internet. He convinced me to try it for the first time, in the form of a 500 mg capsule. I purchased that from him for $5, and decided I would take it that night before I went to bed. I really had no idea how strong of a dose this was, and what it would do to me. At the most, I thought it would make me feel drunk, and maybe a little tripped out. I usually smoke a joint before I go to sleep, but I had decided against that this night, because I wanted a pure DXM experience. I had eaten Chinese food about 2 hours before, so I did not have any empty stomach. I took the pill around 10 p.m., thinking I could just go to sleep if I didn't like what happened to me. I then played around on my computer for 45 minutes, thinking that nothing was going to happen to me and that perhaps my friend had tricked me into buying a capsule of powdered sugar, or some other substance. Then, at about 10:50 I was hit very hard by sensations that everything was moving really slow and was pulsating. I no longer had interest in my computer, and I decided to lay down and try to go to sleep. I called another friend of mine and told him that I thought DXM was pretty cool, and he ought to try it. Almost immediately after I hung up the phone, I began to feel sick in my stomach. I noticed that all my limbs felt very heavy, and that it was very difficult to move them. When I did manage to move a limb or especially my head, my stomach felt very sick. Whenever I opened my eyes, my room spun around me in an array of flashing, pulsating, gold, yellow, green, and magenta lights. The whole time I was hearing deep, garbled human speech, and a consistent thud, thud, thud of drums beating. The combination of these effects was freaking me out, and I wanted it to all end right then. I considered waking my dad, who is the head of the local pollution control center, and telling him what I had done. I probably would have, if I could have gotten out of bed to tell him. I had no idea how long the trip would last, but every time I managed to open my eyes long enough to read my digital clock, time had only moved ahead 5 minutes. I thought that I had overdosed and that I was going to die, and I could feel my organs in my stomach grinding against each other. At about 12:30 a.m., I must have fallen asleep or went into a deep trip I don't recall, because I woke up at 2:30 a.m. feeling that I needed to go take a dump. The crazy noises were still there, but the flashing lights were all gone. When I got out of bed and tried to open my door, the door appeared to lean backwards to a 45-degree angle, and the sprung back at me. I managed to make it to the toilet, and I took a dump, and right after I finished I vomited repeatedly. Because my whole face and the rest of my body felt numb, I couldn't taste the vomit, so I felt much better after this. Walking back to my room, I felt very good, and was extremely happy that I could finally go to sleep. When I woke up the next morning to my alarm clock, I felt wired. My eyes were wide open, and I felt as though low amounts of electricity were pulsating through me, causing me to walk very fast with stiff legs. I went to school, and I made it through all my classes okay. My friends told me that I was shaking and staring at nothing for most of the day. By about 5 p.m. I was beginning to think that I had done permanent brain damage to myself, and that I was always going to be like that. At 10 p.m., I smoked a joint with a friend, and this helped tremendously to calm my nerves, and it rid me of the other symptoms as well. I learned from this experience that I should not have done such a high dosage my first time, and that I should have learned more about what I was doing before I did it. If I were to do it again, I would probably refrain from eating beforehand, and I would probably choose a time when I wasn't about to go to sleep and I had someone to talk to tell me I wasn't going to die. I think if I was more aware of what was going to happen, I could have controlled the trip better and enjoyed it a lot more. The author wrote a retrospective on this report 15 years later.